What if everything you knew was wrong? What if being smart wasn't about having all the right answers, but knowing when to rethink them? In a world that's changing faster than ever, unlearning might just be the most important skill you never learned. Welcome to the Game-Changing Ideas from Think Again by Adam Grant, a book that teaches you not how to think, but how to rethink. Think Again challenges us to let go of stale opinions, outdated assumptions, and even our most cherished beliefs. Not because they're wrong, but because they might be. Through gripping stories, psychological research, and practical advice, Adam Grant walks us through how to upgrade our thinking in a world where clinging to certainty is often a recipe for disaster. The book is divided into 4 parts. 1. Individual rethinking. 2. Interpersonal rethinking. 3. Collective rethinking. 4. Conclusion and actions for impact. Let's dive in, chapter by chapter. Prologue: The Firefighter Who Lit a Fire to Survive. The book opens with one of the most gripping survival stories in firefighting history. In 1949, Wagner Dodge, a smoke jumper, part of an elite team of wildfire fighters, was deployed with his team to battle a forest fire in Montana's Man Gulch. What started as a routine mission quickly turned into a nightmare. The fire suddenly changed direction and charged up the hill toward the men. With flames stretching over 30 feet high and moving at breakneck speed, Dodge made a decision that defied logic. Instead of trying to outrun the fire, he bent down, lit a match, and set the grass ahead of him on fire. This wasn't madness, it was genius. Dodge invented an escape fire on the spot. By burning the grass in front of him, he created a patch of land devoid of fuel. He lay in the burned area with a wet handkerchief over his mouth as the main wildfire roared over him. Dodge survived. Most of his team didn't. They tried to outrun the fire with heavy tools on their backs and perished just shy of the ridge. Why couldn't they follow Dodge's example? It wasn't physical fitness that doomed them. It was mental rigidity. Dodge's team couldn't rethink their deeply ingrained beliefs in time. That fire is something you fight, not start. That tools are essential to survival, not burdens to drop. Adam Grant uses this story as a metaphor for one of the central themes of the book. In moments of crisis or change, our instincts might not serve us. It's not intelligence or skill alone that ensures survival. It's the willingness to think again. Dodge didn't survive because he thought harder. He survived because he thought differently. This idea sets the foundation for the rest of the book. Our ability to rethink, not just react, is what enables growth, resilience, and innovation. Part 1. Individual rethinking, updating our own views. Chapter 1. A preacher, a prosecutor, a politician, and a scientist walk into your mind. We often approach our beliefs with the tenacity of preachers defending dogma, prosecutors attacking opposing arguments, or politicians seeking favor. Each of these mindsets, Grant argues, traps us in a cycle of confirmation, reinforcing what we already believe instead of questioning it. The result? We get stuck. To counter this, we need to think like scientists. Scientists view their beliefs as hypotheses to be tested, not truths to be defended. They are curious, open to new data, and willing to revise their views in light of new evidence. Thinking like a scientist involves embracing doubt, valuing curiosity, and treating being wrong as part of the learning process. One vivid example is the rise and fall of BlackBerry. Mike Lazaridis, its co-founder, revolutionized mobile communication with the BlackBerry device. But as the iPhone surged in popularity, he resisted adapting, clinging to physical keyboards and email-centric design while ignoring the growing demand for mobile browsing and apps. His downfall wasn't a lack of intelligence. It was a refusal to rethink. Key insight, flexibility in thought, not certainty, is the mark of wisdom. Cultivating a scientific mindset in our personal and professional lives allows us to evolve with our circumstances rather than remain stuck in outdated beliefs. Chapter 2. The Armchair Quarterback and the Impostor. Finding the sweet spot of confidence. Confidence is a tricky thing. Too little of it leads to imposter syndrome, the feeling of being a fraud despite genuine competence. Too much leads to arrogance, The Dunning-Kruger effect, where people who know the least are often the most convinced of their knowledge. Grant urges us to aim for confident humility, believing in our ability to grow and improve, while remaining open to feedback and aware of our limitations. He shares examples of people who underestimated themselves and others who overrated their skills, often with damaging consequences. One especially illustrative case is Dag Oddsson, the Icelandic politician partially blamed for the country's financial crisis. Despite no background in economics, he confidently implemented policies that contributed to the collapse, and afterward refused to acknowledge any error. Key insight: true confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the ability to admit what you don't know and remain open to learning. Chapter 3. The Joy of Being Wrong. The thrill of not believing everything you think. Being wrong is often seen as embarrassing or shameful. But what if we reframed it as an opportunity for discovery? Grant explores the joy of being wrong, the thrill of updating your beliefs and becoming wiser because of it. He introduces us to super forecasters, individuals who consistently make accurate predictions because they regularly revise their beliefs. Their secret? They treat each idea as provisional and welcome disconfirming information. This mindset contrasts sharply with the way many of us cling to our opinions. Once we've taken a stance, we look for information that supports it and ignore evidence that contradicts it. Grant calls this the confirmation bias trap and argues that learning to love being wrong is the antidote. Key insight: every time we discover we were wrong, we're one step closer to being right. Embracing this mindset keeps us agile and mentally sharp. Chapter 4. The Good Fight Club, the Psychology of Constructive Conflict. Conflict often gets a bad rap, but when handled well, it's a powerful engine for learning. In this chapter, Grant highlights the difference between relationship conflict, which is personal and harmful, and task conflict, which is about ideas and can be incredibly productive. He shares how Pixar fosters a culture of thoughtful debate, where directors, writers, and producers are encouraged to challenge each other's ideas early and often. Bridgewater Associates, an investment firm known for its radical transparency, does the same. These organizations thrive not in spite of conflict, but because of it. However, constructive conflict requires psychological safety. People need to feel safe speaking up, offering dissenting opinions, and admitting mistakes. Without it, even the best ideas can be lost to fear or silence. Key insight: great teams don't avoid disagreement, they embrace it. But they also build a culture where people can disagree respectfully and feel safe doing so. Together, these 4 chapters in Part 1 lay the foundation for personal transformation. They show that growth doesn't come from defending what you know. It comes from daring to rethink, even when it's uncomfortable. Part 2. Interpersonal rethinking, opening other people's minds. Chapter 5. Dances with Foes, How to Win Debates and Influence People. When we aim to persuade others, our instinct is to argue, to present facts, to convince. But this often backfires. Adam Grant explains that trying to change someone's mind by overwhelming them with logic rarely works, especially when emotions and identities are at stake. Instead, he introduces a more effective approach borrowed from clinical psychology: motivational interviewing. This technique doesn't involve confrontation. Rather, it invites the other person to explore their own motivations for change. It's built on asking, not telling, using open-ended questions, affirmations, and reflective listening to reduce defensiveness and increase self-awareness. Grant shares the story of Daryl Davis, a black musician who convinced dozens of white supremacists to leave the Ku Klux Klan. His secret? He didn't attack their beliefs. He sat down with them, asked sincere questions, and built unlikely friendships. In doing so, he created safe spaces for reflection and change. Key takeaway: to open someone else's mind, start by listening deeply. Ask questions that help them reflect on their beliefs and identify discrepancies. When people feel heard instead of attacked, they're more likely to rethink. Chapter 6. Bad Blood on the Diamond, Diminishing Prejudice by Destabilizing Stereotypes. This chapter explores how deep-seated prejudices can begin to shift, not through force or facts alone, but through meaningful interaction with individuals who contradict the stereotypes. Grant describes a powerful moment in professional baseball, when a player who had once expressed racist beliefs had a change of heart. Why? Because a teammate, a black man, patiently challenged his views through repeated, respectful interactions. Prejudice often arises not from hatred, but from ignorance and inherited assumptions. It's destabilized when those assumptions are disrupted, when individuals meet someone who doesn't fit the mold they've imagined. Grant also references research showing that exposure to counter-stereotypical examples, like female leaders in male-dominated industries or successful professionals from underrepresented backgrounds, can shift perceptions. Even watching positive media portrayals of people from marginalized groups can move the needle. Key takeaway: changing minds isn't about direct confrontation. It's about consistent exposure to people who contradict the stereotypes and giving those relationships time and space to reshape beliefs. Chapter 7: Vaccine Whisperers and Mild-Mannered Interrogators. How the right kind of listening motivates people to change. In this chapter, Grant dives into one of the most emotionally charged debates of our time: vaccine hesitancy. But rather than offering a one-size-fits-all argument, he introduces us to a more empathetic method: the work of so-called vaccine whisperers. These professionals approach conversations with hesitant parents not by lecturing them with data, but by listening, really listening. They seek to understand the person's fears and motivations before gently introducing new perspectives. Their approach mirrors the motivational interviewing method: stay curious, validate concerns, and resist the urge to correct or confront too soon. Similarly, Grant discusses the negotiation tactics of a woman who helped end civil wars in Africa. Her success came not from overpowering her opponents, but from asking disarming questions and building rapport, even with warlords. Her method underscores a powerful truth: when people feel safe and understood, they're more willing to reflect and change. Key takeaway: listening is not passive. It's one of the most powerful tools we have for influence. When we listen to understand, not to respond, we create conditions where transformation becomes possible. Together, these 3 chapters reframe what it means to influence others. It's not about dominance, logic, or charisma. It's about connection. Persuasion begins not with a megaphone, but with an open mind and a quiet ear. Part 3: Collective Rethinking, Creating Communities of Lifelong Learners. Chapter 8: Charged Conversations, Depolarizing Our Divided Discussions. Polarization is one of the greatest barriers to rethinking. In today's world, people cling to binary views. You're either right or wrong, with us or against us. In this chapter, Grant explains how we can reduce polarization by encouraging complexity and nuance in conversations. He introduces the idea of complexity humility, the recognition that most issues aren't black and white. Grant highlights the work of the nonprofit Better Angels, which brings together Republicans and Democrats for structured conversations. These groups don't aim for agreement, but for understanding. They teach participants to express their views with less certainty and listen to others with more curiosity. Another powerful tool is the use of advice giving instead of direct argument. Asking people how they would advise someone else in a similar situation creates a safe psychological distance, allowing people to examine their views more openly. Key takeaway: we don't depolarize by convincing others we're right. We do it by validating their emotions, encouraging complexity, and promoting mutual respect. Progress happens when we stop trying to win debates and start seeking shared understanding. Chapter 9: Rewriting the Textbook, Teaching Students to Question Knowledge. Traditional education teaches students to memorize answers. But Grant argues that real education should train students to question assumptions. In this chapter, he profiles innovative educators who are reshaping how learning happens by turning classrooms into laboratories of curiosity. One example is a teacher who encourages students to debate both sides of controversial topics, even those they personally disagree with. This builds cognitive flexibility and teaches students to entertain opposing ideas without necessarily adopting them. Another example comes from museum-style learning, where students are treated like visitors, encouraged to explore, ask questions, and make discoveries on their own terms. Teachers act more like curators and guides than lecturers. Grant also shares how the best teachers constantly rethink their own approaches. They invite feedback from students, reflect on their lessons, and treat teaching itself as an evolving experiment. Key takeaway: education isn't about delivering answers. It's about cultivating minds that know how to ask better questions. The classroom should be a training ground for lifelong rethinking. Chapter 10. That's not the way we've always done it. Building cultures of learning at work. Workplaces often reward efficiency over exploration. But Grant argues that to stay competitive in a fast-changing world, organizations need to build learning cultures. This means making it safe and even expected for people to question the status quo. He gives the example of NASA's tragic Columbia disaster, which stemmed in part from a culture that stifled dissent. When Ellen Ochoa became director of the Johnson Space Center, she implemented changes to ensure that safety concerns could be raised without fear. Her leadership helped transform NASA into a learning organization. Another example is Bridgewater Associates, where employees at all levels are expected to challenge each other, even the CEO. They've built a radical transparency system where feedback is continuous and dissent is welcomed. Grant introduces the idea of challenge networks, groups of trusted colleagues who are invited to critique your ideas. Unlike support networks that offer encouragement, challenge networks push you to question your assumptions. Key takeaway: in a true learning culture, being wrong isn't punished. It's prized as an opportunity to grow. When organizations reward rethinking, they unlock innovation and resilience. Part 4. Conclusion: Escaping Tunnel Vision. Chapter 11. Escaping Tunnel Vision. Reconsidering our best-laid career and life plans. Many of us live life on autopilot, sticking with career paths or personal goals long after they've stopped serving us. In this final chapter, Grant encourages us to rethink not just our ideas, but our identities and life trajectories. He introduces the concept of identity foreclosure, when we commit too early to a specific role or future. Whether it's becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or even a YouTuber, we may get so attached to our chosen path that we stop questioning whether it still fits. Grant urges readers to periodically conduct a life check-in. Are your goals still meaningful? Are your values still aligned with your direction? He also shares how people who treat their careers as experiments, rather than missions, tend to be happier and more successful. Epilogue: Actions for Impact, a toolkit for thinking again. The book ends with a powerful action plan to make rethinking a lifelong habit. Schedule regular rethinking rituals. Review your opinions monthly. Create a challenge network. Invite others to question your ideas. Practice confident humility. Believe in your ability to improve while staying open to being wrong. Redefine strength. Value the courage to change your mind more than the stubbornness to stick with it. Final takeaway: success in a complex world isn't about having all the answers. It's about the willingness to keep asking better questions and the courage to change your mind when the facts change. The smartest people aren't those who know the most. They're the ones who are willing to change their minds the fastest. In a world that rewards certainty, Think Again reminds us that the greatest virtue might just be doubt. So the next time you're sure about something, pause and think again. If you found this summary helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking book breakdowns. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and keep rethinking.